Like Him with Friends Possessed by Allan Dyen-Shapiro. After a marathon day of coding, Cordelia 1564 completed the night's VR cast just in time to go live with it. She held her breath as her avatar disemboweled 4 Kazakh horsemen with a stiletto she'd pinched from the harem master, hung their bodies from a tower, and decorated their nude backsides with pointless designs copied from edu-holos of some 19th century bougie French oil painter. 10 super cools unfollowed her. The comments were scathing. Seen it in a video my grandmother uploaded to Old Fart Tube. Crappy CGI could have come from the Star Wars generation. Be real or get out of the cloud, loser. They were right. Cordelia 1564 had faked it, inserting her likeness into a mashup of bargain-priced content she'd licensed. Nobody followed the boring, and admin wouldn't jingle those feeds without followers. Not that money had ever driven her. Like her namesake, the character in a play she'd attended many times with her grandmother, my grandmother's favorite content creator, or playwright, or whatever they called it back in the 16th century, the dude who rapped with the flowery language that sang like music. Love meant more to her than treasure, but her kid liked to eat. So did she, and no jingle, no food. Her belly rumbled, and she tasted stomach acid in the back of her throat. Wrenching her gaze from the screen, she blinked to clear her rheumy eyes and massaged an ache in her neck. Who is she kidding? Unmodded, too copper-lacking to get inked with animation, she couldn't even pull off porn enticing enough to reel in click-through moolah, much less a sponsorship. Only sponsored channels could afford to subscribe to Synthosync, so Cordelia 1564 couldn't customize hallucinogens. Her show streamed solely in audiovisual mode. The Supercools preferred IV infusion-enhanced entertainment. She returned her eyes to the monitor and trembled as her follower count decremented. 5,046. 5,045. If she fell below 5,000, the algorithm would stop suggesting her to anyone. Well, the story is about the exploitive nature of the gig economy, but I didn't start writing it with that in mind. The idea occurred to me for software that would transform social media posts in iambic pentameter, and I thought the idea was so funny that I had to write a story about it. I went through in my head which Shakespeare work I knew well and liked to figure out in order to figure out what to base this on. And when I saw a line with the words friends and like in close proximity in the 29th sonnet, I knew it had to be that one. The King Lear references came up spontaneously as I was writing. They just kind of occurred to me in my head as being funny. So then I took my set pieces, the things I knew would go somewhere in the sonnet, and given that the character was going to be an internet content creator, I just started, and the story kind of flowed from there. So after I'm at a first draft or close to it, I tend to look back and see what I wrote about and then try to make the story a little bit more about that. So I used to go with the idea that if you put complex characters in a well-realized world with an inciting situation, the plot would just develop organically. And sometimes it does, and everything works beautifully. And sometimes it does after beta readers in my various critique groups tell me what things are illogical, and then I fix it, and then it works. And sometimes it doesn't work at all. And that's when I tend to rely on other people's theories of storycraft. So recently I've found a few that I really like. I've subjected some stories to analysis with Dan Well's 7-point plot structure and also Mary Robinette Cole's variation on Orson Scott Card's mice quotient. I especially liked her insights into how this type of story dictated the type of story conflict. I like things like this, a way of fixing broken stories. If it isn't broken, I don't care what the structure is. Well, I think it's plot development. I mean, if in terms of a process, plot development, as I learn more and more of other people's theories of how it should work, I subject all the things that are not quite working or somebody else tells me aren't quite working to that, and that at least gives me an idea of how it could be fixed. I don't think everything has to fit to anybody's theory, but when it's not working, that's when I look for something like that. I would say in terms of the types of plots that I would go into, I think when I first came off of my science career, there were a lot more characters that were scientists that were, as I was trying to say something about things that I saw that needed to be talked about, ideas that needed to be raised, and I still do that. I just don't exclusively do that. I think I've branched out in a lot more areas. I don't limit myself to something like that. Well, everyone's different, and I'm hesitant to pretend I'm any sort of expert or that I know what anyone else should be doing, but you asked, so I'll give it a shot. So first of all, I'd say know your characters first. If you don't know who they are, you can't tell what they're going to do. If they develop as you are discovery writing, the plot will come along with it. I'd say probably my second idea is that virtually all genre venues will prefer that something changes in your story. Whether it's the character, the situation, I think it's going to depend on the market, or maybe you can get both to change. And that's even true in flash fiction. If neither the character nor the situation changes, you're going to have a really hard time selling it. At least to genre markets. Literary markets, not so much. So if you're halfway through a story you intend for a genre market and absolutely nothing's changed and in the process of changing, something's wrong. So I had a friend who said that when he finds his characters hanging out in a bar, he knows that there's time that they're going to kind of need some plot in there. Well, you gave me the questions earlier, and I had to sit down and think about it. That's actually a really tough question. So what I came up with is, to me, that great plot development is when I have no idea where the story is going when it's in process, but in retrospect, it all makes sense at the time it finishes. So I look back at the short stories that I've read that other people have written in, say, the last 5 years or so, and I looked at some of my favorites, and I was trying to say, why were they my favorites? And I found a couple where the plot development was exactly that. I had absolutely no idea what was going on. I was enjoying the ride, and absolutely everything made sense at the end. So one of them I would mention would be The Future is Blue by Catherine Valenti, which ran in Clark's World in 2019. So this one is set on a garbage island after sea level rises submerged all the continents. And so unlike any life before that, the plot events seem to come out of nowhere. Some of it's nonlinear, and you don't realize exactly what's nonlinear because the language is very futuristic and interesting. So you don't know what to take literally. And with all of that, you really don't know what to expect at the end. So I guess the two elements there were all the very unusual world, all the very unusual language, and then what may or may not have been nonlinearity, but you really don't know it's nonlinearity until the end of the story, really kept me from figuring out where it was going, and then everything wrapped up in the last couple paragraphs. And it was beautiful, and it was wonderful, and I loved it. Now, another story that I would put in that same category of I didn't know what was going on well enough to anticipate the plot, so it was surprising and exciting as it went along, would probably be Welcome to Your Authentic Indian Experience by Rebecca Roanhorse. This one ran in Apex in 2017. And in this, virtual reality is used as both something real and as a metaphor. And the story parallels the experience of a tourist in and out of a fake Indian world, a fake Native American world, where the tourists basically get the Indian experience, the various aspects of lives of Native Americans. And the protagonist himself is going in and out of a middle-class existence. So there are really no hints as to this what's being the structure until you get the last out, which is really at the end in the last paragraphs. So because the structure is there and the structure is solid, but you don't know to expect it, I can't anticipate the plot. The other thing is that it's told in second person. So the second person really unifies the story, as if you have a narrator is telling the protagonist what's happening to him and explaining that. And it's not clear whether the narrator is the future version of the protagonist or someone else. It's just a narrator, so you never figure out who is talking to you being the protagonist. And all of that put together made it unanticipatable. So I think, to me, that's what a fantastic plot is it's something where it's logical, it's developed, it's got all the right elements in there, but you absolutely can't anticipate it. You have to run with it until it goes, and then it wraps up beautifully at the end. I guess twist plot structures are also kind of interesting like that, but neither of those would have been a twist structure, because a twist is like you're expecting something and you get something else. And those are a lot more common. Pretty much every Twilight Zone story is a twist story, and that was probably my favorite TV show of all time. Shout out to any of the friends or any of the writer colleagues who may be listening to this. All of my great colleagues over that I interact with, whether on online writing workshop or in Codex or through SIFWA or through any of the local writing groups I'm in. If you're listening to me, hopefully you enjoyed what I had to say.